Welcome to another video. Now, I was listening to a Grand Master talk recently, and he said what you want to do is just pick an opening and play that opening thousands of times, for many, many years until you've memorized every possible move and every possible variation, every possible reaction that your opponent's going to do. So let's just give an example. So here we go. Let's say you choose to play e4. Okay, that's called the king's pawn opening. Common response for black is e5. So white goes e4, black goes e5. Now from there, the computer recommends knight on f3. Knight on f3. Okay, so we know if you go e4, he goes e5, you bring the knight up. Okay. But what if you go e4 and he brings his pawn up? Well, the computer says for you to take. Okay, so you remembered that now. You remember these things, okay? So if you go e4 and he goes e5, you bring your knight up. Okay, but if you go e4 and he brings his f-pawn up, then you take. Okay, so it's all about memorizing. So you go e4. What if he brings his knight up? Well, your best move is to push. Causes him to have to move. Okay, so you remember that. Now, what if you go e4 and he goes d5? Your best move is to take. Okay, let's say you go e4 and he pushes his pawn to c6. That's called Caro-Kann defense, by the way. If he does that, your best response is to push your pawn to gain more control of the center. See? Look at all these positions you control with these pawns. Okay. Now, if you do that, if you move that pawn there, and he's doing Caro-Kann, his next move is going to be, well, let's see what his next best move is. Yep, push that pawn. And then from there, your best move is here. Let's say you go e4, and he brings his knight up. Again, you push the pawn to control the center. Let's say you go e4, he goes e5, you bring your pawn up. Let's say he brings the knight up, then you bring your bishop up. That's called Ruy Lopez, or the Spanish game. Okay? So you've taken it a little bit further. Okay? Let's say you bring the pawn up, and he brings his pawn up. You bring your knight out. Let's say he brings his knight out. Computer's saying to take. Now the computer's saying that he should push. And then you go back. And then his knight takes. Now it's saying for you to push, but to push there. Now he goes here. Okay, so it sounds all crazy. But what if you go here, he goes here, you go here, he goes here, you decide to take, but instead, what if he puts his queen here? Then you need to remember, okay, well, I'll do this. So basically, memorizing the best move that the computer tells you to make. So you got to remember, when you make a move, they might not necessarily make the best response. Like let's say they do something like that, and you would say, well, that is not the best. According to opening principles, that's not the first best move. What you want to do is, push one of these pawns, or get your knights out. One of those would be a better move. Like this one is what the computer recommends. Okay, so, but you're going to need to be able to know, what do I do in all these scenarios. So let's say they don't reply with the pawn to e5. Let's say after you go e4, what if they did do something like this? Your best move, again, control the center. So if they do something dubious, your response, if you're white, should be just push that other pawn and take over the center. That seems to be it. What else could they do? Let's look and see. Let's say you go here, and he goes here. Well, you know he's preparing to go here. It's called fianchetto. And again, the computer's recommending that you just try to own that center. Okay. And then you can go here. Okay. So we've seen, if you're deciding that you're going to do this, which is called King's Opening, you've seen many possible reactions that black could do, and we've covered them, what your next move should be. Let's say after you go e4, let's say they go e5, and then let's say you bring your knight up, but then they bring the pawn to protect. Well, the computer says to take. Yes, you're going to temporarily lose a knight. The computer's recommending that the queen go here. But let's say the person doesn't make the best move. Let's say they go here. Then you can say check, king goes here, queen goes here, king goes here, queen goes here, pawn goes here, bishop goes here, king goes here, queen goes here, queen goes here, queen goes here, knight goes there. You try to push the queen away, she goes here, queen takes. It all gets very exciting. But let's go back, and you see there's going to be, black's not going to respond necessarily the way you think they might. So let's say in that scenario, queen comes up, says check. Instead of the black king going here, which is what the computer recommends, what if they just push the pawn? You come over this way, you say check. And if the queen tries to block, now you just got a rook. But now look, the queen can come and say check. It's saying the king should move over. And then the queen can go back here. But even in that scenario, what if you don't know to move your king over, and so you take your bishop and go here? Now boom, he's got your pawn, threatening taking your rook and putting you in check. So now you've got to move your rook over. So you want to learn all these variations, all these variables. Let's go back to that beginning. All right, let's say you do push the pawn, and let's say they push here. Now we know earlier we said if that happens, go ahead and take. All right, now from there, what might they do? If they come here, what might your response be? Okay, it says right here, push your knight. This way, you're developing your piece and you're attacking the queen. Now it's saying that he should go this way, but maybe he won't. Maybe he'll do something else. Okay? So let's go back. Let's say you push, he goes here, you take, but instead this time, if the queen doesn't take, let's say he brings his knight up. What can you do? Well, the computer's saying to go here. And then he can just come and get your pawn. And then you can develop with an attack on the queen. So that's one way. But what if you go here, he goes here, you take, he brings the knight up, and instead of you pushing the knight there, what if you come in and say check? Now he's got some possibilities. He could push the pawn. He could block with the knight. And look what happens. If he pushes the pawn, you're going to take with that pawn. If he blocks with the knight, you're going to take his knight with the pawn. And if he brings his bishop up, and you move your bishop back, you've temporarily saved that pawn. So it's all about learning an opening and memorizing every possible response that your opponent's going to do, and then going deeper, every variation on that. This is why once you learn your first 10 moves, and based on how they react and what you're going to do, this is why when you see people playing a game of chess, their first 10 moves, they just fly through them because they've already experienced, okay, if he does this, I'm going to do this. If he does this, I'm going to do this. If he does this, I'm going to do this. And at some point, you've exhausted all that you've remembered. Like if you're just starting, you've only learned maybe the next move. Like let's say you start here, and he goes here. Now, you've learned, okay, whenever that happens, go there. But then that's all you've learned. And then you're out of what they call, you're out of book. Okay, you've exhausted your memory of what to do next. If he brings his pawn up, and let's say you say, oh yes, I know I'm supposed to take, and then he could take here, or he could move this knight up, then you might know, then you'll know if you've been doing this a long time, okay, well the computer says, if he goes here, the computer says I need to go here. And it means, yes, you're going to drop that pawn. Let's say he does come down and take. So if the queen takes the pawn, you bring the knight up, developing your knight with an attack on the queen. The more and the deeper that you can memorize all these moves and responses, it's a lot of time you save. For example, if you're playing a game and you've already learned not only your first move, but you've memorized what to do after they make their second move, and then you've memorized what your third move's going to be. Okay, right there, you could knock out those 3 moves losing no time. Let's say you're playing a rapid game, 10 minutes with a 5-second increment. Well, you just made 3 moves in almost no time. Let's say it's taken you only a second or 2 to make it, and every time you make that move you get 5 seconds. Now your clock's going to have over 10 minutes on it because you haven't lost any time. And so this is why, if you can memorize not only your first move, but your first 10 moves or so, the more deeper that you can memorize all of your moves in this particular opening that you're learning. This is called King's Pawn opening. Now, as soon as you bring this knight up, it's called King's Knight opening. And let's say he goes here. Now, as soon as you bring the bishop up, now the game has a name called Ruy Lopez, or Spanish game. So when people say, hey, what kind of opening do? You could say, well, I'm e4, I go e4. So then they know your first move is bringing that pawn up. See, e4. Or you could say, well, I like the Ruy Lopez, or I like the Spanish game. Then they'll know this is the setup that you're talking about. The more you can remember where you want to put your pieces in a particular opening, and the more in depth you can memorize your reaction to all of your opponent's reactions, the more time you're going to save in the beginning. And according to the Grandmaster, over time you'll learn where you want to put your pieces for the end game so that you end up winning. So it's going to take a lot. You're going to have to play the same opening for many, many games. But he says that's what you do. You pick one opening and you just use that opening every single time. So don't try different openings. I mean, maybe in the beginning you can to find one you like, but once you find one you like, in my case, I like to go e4. That's my opening. My first move is always going to be e4 if I'm white. And then no matter whatever they do, I've memorized what my next move is going to be. So I know if he goes here, I'm going to take. For example, if I go e4 and he comes with a knight, I know I'm going to do this. Okay, if I go e4, You know, when he does this, I know I'm just going to push my pawn and control that center. And you just keep learning every possible reaction, and you'll be able to tell when you're playing someone if they're doing something that's not, if their response is not the best according to the computer. You still want to watch out for what they're doing. They may know something. They may have a plan. And so you want to pay attention to what they're doing. But anyway, so this was the advice I got while listening to this Grand Master. It's kind of interesting because when I first started learning chess, I thought, wow, how do they know where to move all the pieces? Well, that's how. They've memorized a bunch of moves based on the opening that they're playing, and they've played it so many times that they know how to respond according to how their opponent reacts to their moves. Okay, so anyway, I say to you, take the advice of that Grand Master and find an opening you like and just play that same opening. Same thing if you're playing black. Pick a defense you like and learn all the variations on that defense. Well, I think this is a fascinating thing to know, to hear a Grandmaster say, just pick an opening and play it thousands of times and just play that opening. And every time after you play, have the computer analyze your game. Oh, okay. You might say, okay, in this scenario where I went left, I should have gone right. I should have done this. I should have gone there. And eventually, with the computer's help, you'll learn all the best moves for that opening and all the best responses to your opponent's responses. And eventually, you won't have to use so much time. In the beginning, you won't be using any of your time to think because you already have memorized the best moves. And this will be good for later in the game when you need that time to think, because later in the game it will have gotten so many moves down the road that you will have not memorized all the possible responses. All right, well, thank you for watching this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.